everybody, Calamari here, back in the kitchen. Today we are going to be cooking a brown rice sushi at home. A lot of people are intimidated by the thought of making sushi, but really it's pretty simple. And before we start, there is a few things you're going to need. You're going to want a rice cooker and some rice vinegar. You're also going to need a chopping board and a sweetener of choice, whether it be honey, maple syrup, sugar, really whatever you want. Obviously, then, you're going to need some rice. For today, we're using brown rice. You're going to need some sushi seaweed, some type of a mat or towel to wrap your sushi in, and then your ingredients of choice. The rice of a sushi roll is really the foundation of it, so it's important that you get this step right. But really, it's pretty easy. For brown rice here, what you want to do is you first want to strain the rice in warm water. What you can do with this is just put the rice into a bowl and continue to rinse out the water until it runs clear. This is a very important step so that the rice has the right consistency for when it comes out of the cooker. The next thing you want to do is you want to measure out about a cup of brown rice. Remember that when your rice is finished cooking, it will result in about double the quantity of what you originally put in. So simply add the rice to the cooker that's strained. Now, when adding water to the rice, a good rule of thumb is you want to touch your pinky to the top of the rice, not to the bottom of the bowl, and you want the water to reach the second knuckle of your pinky. It works every time. You will get the perfect sticky rice. Now, the next thing you want to do is you want to add some rice vinegar. This will give the rice a little bit more flavor and help it get a more sticky consistency. You want to add about 2 tablespoons of vinegar. It's not a big deal, I usually just eyeball it, but if you want precise measurements, there you go. The next thing you want to add is you want to add some type of a sweetener. This will also add to the flavor of the rice and really help with the consistency as well. Now, you might find this odd, but actually a good sweetener to use for me is honey. You can really use anything you want, whether it be sugar, maple syrup, monk fruit, really anything works, but personally I think honey does a pretty good job. You want to add about a tablespoon of whatever sweetener you choose. After that, you just want to add a pinch of salt to it and then press the cook button. If your rice cooker doesn't have an instant cook button, expect about 30 to 45 minutes. Now, when taking it out of the cooker, if there's any excess liquid, you do want to strain that. And at first, the rice might seem not very sticky at all, but after draining it and letting it sit, it will become sticky. The next step is optional, but I definitely prefer my sushi this way. If you want, you can leave the rice in a fridge overnight, and that'll further add to the texture. And on top of that, it makes the rice cold if you like your sushi cold. What you're going to want is something to roll the sushi in. Now, traditionally, you would use a bamboo mat, but I actually ran out of money for this video, so we're going to be using a hand towel covered in saran wrap, which, believe it or not, actually works pretty well. You're going to want to add a sheet of nori seaweed onto the rolling device. Now, we're going to be making a traditional maki roll today, and you can either use a half sheet or a full sheet, depending on how big you want the pieces to be. As you can see, it took about half the bowl of rice to make this one roll of sushi. You want it to be a nice, level, firm layer so that it makes the rolling easier. You also want to make sure that the rice reaches the edge of the seaweed as much as possible, just because overall that'll make it a more appealing roll to look at. The next part's where it really can get fun. One of the great things about sushi is that it's customizable almost endlessly. Here we have 2 traditional sushi meats, and we are going to be using this delicious yellowfin tuna. Traditionally, a maki roll will be filled with some type of a fish. Now, you don't necessarily have to do this if you don't want, but I'm going to for today. Here we have the tuna, and as you can see, it is an irregular shape, but that's alright. Usually for me, I usually like to use a uniform piece so that it's easier to cut so that you can fit it into the sushi better. Now, what you want to do is you just want to cut this off, and what you can do with the spare is you can slice that up, and you've got some nice pieces of tuna sashimi. Alright, so here we have the tuna nice and cut. I cut them pretty thick just because I really like fish. And I've got some of the leftovers turned into sashimi. I would like to point out, though, that using a sushi knife is usually best. This, however, is not. You can see the blade is very thick. It does make it significantly more difficult to cut the fish into the desired size, but a regular knife will work just fine. I ran out of money for this video, so I could only afford one single cucumber. But if you have more money than I do, you can go ahead and splurge on whatever veggies and ingredients you'd like. Now the rolling is one of the more difficult parts of making sushi, but with a little patience, it's pretty easy. Now again, there's not a lot of funds going around, so I couldn't afford a bamboo mat. But again, a towel will do the job if you're in a pinch. So how you kind of want to start this out is you want to get a lip up on the roll. And then you just kind of want to push it over itself. Alright, and then you've got kind of a base here started. And again, this is kind of touchy. The towel is harder to work with, but you kind of just got to be patient. So you just kind of want to roll and tuck as you go. As you can see, I'm actually struggling quite a bit. There you go, that's an extremely thick roll of sushi, and holy crap, that sucks. Alright, so my initial attempt really sucked big time, but we got it a little better. There is some smushage here, but you can cut the ends off. And again, if you're making this at home, you're probably not making it to look like a 5-star restaurant, but it'll taste all the same. Alright, so I kind of want to show you guys something. So this right here, this is the knife I've been trying to use to cut the sushi. It's because it's the only thin knife that I have. It's extremely dull, and this is what happens when you try to cut sushi with a dull knife. It just tears the seaweed and squishes out the rice. So don't cheap out like me. Get some knives that are actually worth using, because we've only ended up with 4 good pieces. Anyways, guys, there you have it. That is how you make sushi. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward. If you're willing to put a little bit more work into it, unlike me, you won't ruin half the roll. So don't take it from me, but sushi is actually quite easy to make and pretty fun. So there you have it. That is how you make brown rice sushi easily and affordably at home.